I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program and day 2 of Cafr School. And yes, that's the comprehensive annual financial report, the most important document ever, and the most hidden, open secret that exists today in government. Even more so than most of the top secret stuff that's always discussed on all those conspiracy radio show programs. This thing, this Cafr, is more secret than even the most top secret crap out there. And it's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing feat when you think about it, because it's kept out of the education system. You don't learn about this. There's classes where I've seen some of the classes where they teach about the Cafr. It's amazing. They don't know anything about the Cafr, what it is. All they teach you is how to go to a certain section, pick out something, and put it. Don't teach you how to read. Don't teach you what the terms mean. It's an amazing, amazing thing. An amazing feat to keep the Cafr out of the media, out of the public education system, and out of the public knowledge in general since 1946, when this thing first started. I mean, you've got to understand, folks, that is an amazing, amazing feat, to say the least. That is incredible. So we're here to discuss this thing because it is the foundation of government. In other words, it is the financial statements, audited financial statements of government. My God, how can that be hidden? Well, we discussed yesterday, all the public gets is a budget report. Budget report is a hand-selected, dumbed-down version. After all the creative accounting and lying and thievery takes place within the Cafr, you get the budget. So we want to tell people, hey, stop looking at the budget. The budget is a single year thing. It has nothing to do with the financial status of government. It's no different than your own budget. You're going to make $50,000 this year. Here's how I'm going to spend that $50,000. That's it. That's what the budget is. Oh. Never mind that I have $1 million stashed away over here and $1 billion stashed away over here. All we care about in the budget, and all the people care about because they don't know any better, is what's in the budget report. What's happening this year? Well, the Cafr is not just the budgetary items, but also all of the investment wealth of government. That's why it is so darn important. Now, today I want to start off with a little story. We're going to get to the history of this thing today because it's a fascinating history. It's the history of how private organizations, associations, non-governmental organizations took over government starting in the late 1800s. But first, one of the things I wrote a while ago was called Cafr School. The Vatican is broke. Did you know that the Vatican was broke at one point? That's right. In a small little blurb that I just happened to notice while I was eating breakfast one day in a restaurant, small little blurb, little tiny little piece in the Salt Lake Tribune. A gem of a story. It says it was referencing an Associated Press article, and I literally laughed out loud, like in the restaurant, embarrassing myself when I read it because I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Here's what it said. It said Vatican posts a $19 million deficit, the worst in years. by Nicole Winfield of the Associated Press. You hear that? I mean, let's just stop and consider for a moment here. Here's the Vatican, its own nation, its own city-state, if you will, right? It owns priceless artifacts. Like literally all of the money in the world or in a nation could not buy just one of the artifacts that is stored out of millions in the Vatican vaults, right? So when you see a headline like this, Vatican posts $19 million deficit, the worst in years. Does that not make you laugh out loud? Talk about, are we that stupid that they could post this kind of stuff and get away with it? Well, apparently they can, because there it was. Now, to me, this is no different than saying Stockton is bankrupt or Detroit is bankrupt. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's a lie. What it's doing is taking the budget and not referencing the Cafr. Same thing. Vatican is doing the same exact thing as any municipality that's declaring bankruptcy. Same exact thing. So hopefully this will make you understand what's happening with all these lies out there about bankruptcy. Detroit, Stockton, Chicago, they're all talking about it. It's just silly. Okay, first published July 9th, 2012, from Vatican City. The Vatican has registered one of the worst budget deficits in years, plunging back into the red with a 15 million euro or $19 million deficit in 2011 after a brief respite of profit. The Vatican on Thursday blamed the poor outcome on high personnel and communication costs and adverse market conditions, particularly for its real estate holdings. Okay, let's talk about its real estate holdings, okay? Hundreds and hundreds of millions of acres of real estate and land holdings for the Vatican, okay? So you see what they're reporting is a loss in value, not the actual value of the real estate. They're saying that of the trillions of dollars that these things are worth, we just lost, I think, about a $15 million value from it. Therefore, we're in a deficit. This is how ridiculous our government is as well. I want you to understand that just because we're talking about the Vatican, this is just the macro scale of what happens in the microcosm of each municipality, each state, each district, each county, and, of course, in the federal government. Complete lies. So, in other words, their budget report shows a $15 million loss in the euro loss in the value of something, but does not tell you that that something is liquid and worth trillions of dollars. Oh, poor Vatican. But wait, there's more. The Vatican on Thursday blamed the poor outcome on high personnel. We read that, didn't we? Adverse market conditions. Okay, what does that mean? That means this all has to do with its investments. Its investments. Not even a euro 50 million gift to the Pope from the Vatican Bank and increased donations from dioceses and religious orders could offset the expenses and poor investment returns, the Vatican said in its annual financial report. Now, when we're talking about poor investment returns, okay, that's the end. That, by the way, that was it. All right? That was the story. And I laughed because all the keys are there. Perfect example of any city out there. What's the problem? Adverse market conditions. Poor return on investments. All right? Well, but wait a minute. What do you hear all the time? Oh, it was a horrible year in the stock market, therefore we have to raise taxes. What? Wait a minute. Government, you telling me you lost money and so we have to pay for your investment, your bad investments? Well, what? Yeah, that's exactly how it works. What they don't tell you is that the previous 5 years were wonderful years, and that when you add up 5 years compared to this 1 year, it's actually like a $90 billion gain. So they don't tell you that. They only focus on the negatives. They love to promote debt. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
ones who start to mold a new reality, closer to the heart, closer to the heart.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Blacksmith and the artist.
We're talking about the Vatican being broke, in case you didn't know. Now, I want you to really recognize here that for an institution like the Vatican to actually claim to the public to be broke, it's embarrassing. Because again, I mean, just think of the vaults, think of the museum, the stuff that you can see in the museum, and then think about what's in those vaults. I mean, it's so ridiculous when you think about it. Plus, they have their own bank, a $50 million gift to the Pope from the Vatican Bank. Well, obviously that means there must be some money in that bank besides that $50 million, because they're not going to give all the money away in their bank, right? So what's the bank account balance? You know, that's the sad part about us is we don't know the bank account balance of our local municipality, our county, our state, our district, our school district. We have no idea, even the basics about government. You can complain all you want, but if you don't know the checking account balance in the general fund of your own dang city, then you have no authority or right to complain because you know absolutely nothing about your own government. You don't even know the checking account balance, let alone what's in the Cafr, which is all the investments. I mean, we are a pathetic people if we think we have the right to complain through such ignorance. Now, we can learn a lot from this statement because I'm just going to read you this list here that I created. Okay, the Vatican is a corporation, right? As is each individual and federal government agency, right? They're all just corporations. Municipal corporations, actually what they're called, referred to. They're corporations. That's all. Number two, the Vatican and the government, U.S. government, operate both in the non-profit and in the for-profit realm. Okay, the Vatican says here it has a museum that it charges for. Well, guess what? When you look at the Cafr, it's reported in governmental and non-governmental accounting. Half of it about is governmental, which is your street cleaning and all the stuff that you pay taxes for. But guess what? Government also considers you, just like the Vatican does, a customer. It calls you a customer when you get your electric bill, when you get your any bill from government. It's calling you a customer. You ever think about this for a second? What does that mean? It means you're not a taxpayer. You're a customer. You've lost taxpayer rights. They're charging you a for-profit price because why? You're a customer of government. Okay, they look at you as a commodity. And the more that they can pass off into the non-governmental realm, yes, government has many, many non-governmental functions where it calls you a customer. And it's going to make more and more money as it monopolizes all these corporations it already owns. You understand? You're a customer of government. So both the Vatican and government operate in a non-profit and a for-profit realm. Now, we have to remember that government can't be a for-profit entity. So how does it hide its wealth? If it's making a profit and it's charging for services that it offers to its customers, where does it hide the money? It hides the money in investment funds. You see, when you have an investment fund, and you designate the profits that you take in, you put those in an investment fund, and you designate those funds for a specific future purpose, well, guess what? You don't have a profit anymore. You have funds that are designated to a certain purpose that cannot be used today. Therefore, you don't have to report them as a profit, and you don't have to report them as an asset because they're going to be spent in 20 years. Therefore, they don't exist today. This is how government operates. You understand? Government gets to use all the accounting tricks that are otherwise illegal for the average citizen. Government, of course, pays no taxes. Government doesn't have to answer to the IRS. Government gets to creatively account, lie, cheat, and steal because it's organized crime. It's all legal. They make their own rules. They adopt the rules of private associations. You understand? This is the true reality of government. So government, even though it's making a profit, it hides those profits and calls them non-profit because it puts it into investment funds. You don't see that in the budget report. You might see the general fund, but that's about it. You might see the water and the sewer fund. That's about it. What about some towns have 50 different funds, like Detroit? What about all that money? Oh, well, we're not going to count that in the budget. We're not going to count that as money because we've partitioned that off to pay for a future bridge. 20 years goes by, the bridge never gets built. Well, what happened to that money? Oh, we used it for something else. We transferred it into another fund and designated that as restricted fund balance, and now it's going to sit there, and we're going to invest that into stock and corporate bonds and mortgage-backed securities and anything else the federal government allows us to. That's how government works, folks. That's where all your taxpayer money is going. Not just your taxpayer money, but all the money you pay to government to get its services as a customer. The worst thing that a taxpayer, that a citizen can be is a customer of government. I hate to tell you that. We are in the worst possible situation because government, of course, is a monopoly. It can charge you whatever it wants. And what it does, as we've discussed before, is it gets into public-private partnerships. And it says, okay, J.P. Morgan Chase, give us $1 billion today. We'll give you our parking garages. And in the end, by 20 years or 30 years from now, you're going to get $10, $15 billion in profit. All because you paid us $1 billion a day. Now government doesn't even have to run its own infrastructure because a private corporation is going to do all that for you. Goes out to China or Mexico or Canada or wherever and hires foreign workers that are willing to work for horribly low wages. And that's your government. Are you starting to get the picture? Both the Vatican and the government have real estate holdings, as well as stock investments, foreign currency holdings. Both invest heavily into the worldwide corporate structure and fund its liquidity. What does that mean? Fund its liquidity? Your taxpayer dollars through corporate bonds are funding corporations' expansion. We hit on that yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about corporate bonds just to give you an example that'll probably really shock you of where some of that money is going. Think Carlyle Group. Think Bush. Yes, that's right. Both promote their debt. So the Vatican and government promote their debt while hiding their investment asset balances. What does that mean? Well, what did the Vatican just do? Here's a corporation, a city-state that is priceless, literally, over and over, ad infinitum. Okay, we're talking about a priceless, literally a priceless corporation. The assets in the Vatican are literally over and over priceless, priceless, priceless. And yet, it reports a debt. It reports a 15 million loss or deficit. Okay, what's the difference? That's exactly what government does. Okay? Billions of dollars in investments that are not reported on the budget report. This headline could go for any municipal corporation out there because on paper they can show through creative accounting, through lying, cheating, and stealing, and through reinvestment and reappropriations, they can show anytime they want to because you can, I mean, literally, think about this. Anytime a government wants to, they can create an investment fund and designate that as a liability. In other words, we're going to build a future bridge, therefore we're going to put $1 billion into a fund. Therefore, we have less money. We don't have $1 billion today. That's what they do, so they can report, instantly get rid of any assets they have to show by creating a liability. We'll be back, folks.
Did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Oh, welcome, folks. ridiculous.
There's no place.
I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional. But this just really pisses me off. Sorry. This is just, it's just so ridiculous. All right. So, again, it both promote their debt. Now, I want you to understand that anytime government gets any kind of assets, let's say it collects $1 billion in taxes, but it only needed $700 million, okay? What's it going to do? It's going to create a liability. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be the Santa Claus Fund to build Santa Claus a new ice castle. It doesn't matter. All they need to do is just justify a reason to say, we have $300 million sitting here. We don't want to show that to the public in the budget report. We're going to create a future liability, which is exactly what they call it in the budget report, or in the Cafr. That's what they call it, a future liability due more than 1 year from now, or 1 year from today. And they will literally create a reason, any reason to hide the $300 million. They'll probably they'll say it's $400 million so they can show it that they need to raise taxes because there's an extra $100 million not accounted for. And they'll say again, it's to build a future, it's to build an ice skating rink for the elves. It doesn't matter what it is. The only thing that matters is that the law states, thanks to these private associations, but through accountants and attorneys and bookkeepers, got together and said, how can we hide money and profit and still keep it nonprofit? That's all it is. So there is no way to look at a budget report and say, oh, look, government has a lot of money it's hiding. You have to look at the Cafr. Both the Vatican and the United States, the government, has a central bank, which bails it out in moments of need and then expects Catholics or taxpayers to pay the bill despite its liquid invested holdings. Central bank. Whenever anybody's in trouble, what happens? Government loans to itself. You're going to be surprised to find out that most of the debt that exists throughout the United States, every city, county, state, district, and everything else, is because government borrows from itself. You'll see in the Cafr that one of the bonds is a loan from Oregon to Utah. Another one is from the federal government. But, of course, with all the federal government money, you have to do certain things to get to receive and keep that money. Urban development, sustainable development, right? All Agenda 21 crap. Basically, government is self-funded. In other words, all the debt that we see is borrowed from government. It's a continuous game of borrowing from each other. Why do they do this? Because, of course, debt pays an interest rate. Government loves debt. It passed a law that says you can't pay your debt off early. Bonds must be 30 years or 50 years, and you can't pay them off early. Thanks to the private associations that create those laws, and they're rubber stamped through Congress. So even if, I can show you in your local municipality right now, I can show you that any city out there has enough money to pay off its debt tomorrow by simply liquidating its investments and be completely out of debt and still be in the black. But the lawless law, states that you can't pay off a loan early. In other words, a bond. It must go to fruition, and therefore you must pay the interest. This is how your taxpayers are spent, your dollars are spent. So if your government, your local municipality, your county has some excess, what's it going to do? It's going to loan it to another government, another local municipal corporation. Isn't that pathetic? Or it's going to invest in federal securities and whatever it's allowed to do by law. The law protects it. It's not doing anything illegal. And that's the kicker. Because we're talking about organized crime. When the criminals make the law, crime goes rampant. And that's exactly where we're at today. And this is what is proven when we look in the Cafr. This is why it's secret. Both the Vatican and government openly lie by omission to the people of Earth, while in a position of trust, referring to a deficit while completely ignoring its investment holdings. As if these fund balances didn't even exist. As if government is not a major holder in all corporations, stockholder. As if government is not the main investor in most mutual funds. As if the mortgage-backed securities are not funded by government itself. Complete, open, transparent lie by omission. It's amazing. Again, the biggest open secret is what we're talking about today. Both government and the Vatican use the depreciation of capital assets like land, buildings, vehicles, anything else to show on their financial reports a liability against other assets in order to decrease reportable value of these investment assets. So let's say under the capital assets section, capital assets are land, buildings, and other holdings that are depreciable. Every year your car value goes down. Every year a building's value might go down, although it's a little confusing at times why they can claim, in the lifetime of a building, they can claim the full value of that building in depreciation, which is just amazing. So they'll say, well, we have in our bank account $10 million. However, the depreciation of all of our buildings, vehicles, and everything else was $15 million. Therefore, we have no money in the bank. This is creative accounting, okay, because we add all of our assets together. Very important to understand. We're talking about net, not gross. We're talking about net. Okay, so $10 million sitting there. But because our buildings imaginarily went down in value by 15 million, we now have a negative $5 million deficit. This is how government operates. And all this could be found in the Cafr, where they list depreciation under capital assets. Let's see, what else? Both government and the Vatican create budgets that are falsely imploded with such things as future liabilities so as to justify the raising of taxes or tithings. That one we kind of just explained, so we don't really need to go into that. In other words, if I'm the manager of a department, let's say, in a corporation, and I see that at the end of the year I have a $5,000 that I haven't used this year. Well, how the heck am I going to justify to my constituents, to my taxpayers, or to my boss? How am I going to justify getting the full budget I needed last year or this year for next year? It's budget time. What am I going to do? Well, what do people do out there? They're dishonest. They go and they say, well, I'm going to buy 5,000 staplers. I'm going to buy 5,000 whatever for $1. Or I'm going to go spend $10,000 and have a negative $5,000 balance so that I can ask for more money next year. By the end of next year, I'll have a $10,000 free ride that I can use. Maybe I'll go to the Bahamas. Huh? This is government, and this is all because the reason I know this is because I read the darn financial reports of government. This is how it operates. This is, when I say creative accounting, that's what we're talking about. Another very important aspect, both the Vatican and government, each individual government, create separate subcorporations with their own financial statements as a for-profit entities, but do not use those profits for the benefit of the people. You have, let's say, the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. You have all these authorities out there. You have what's called in the financial report, the Cafr, they're called component units. It's a great way to take taxpayer money and put it again out of the general fund and into the component unit and say now it can only be used for roads. Now it can only be used for this. Now it can only be used for that. Can't use it for what it should be used because, of course, it's coming out of the taxpayer dollars, taxpayer pockets. So now we have all this money either going into investment funds that are hidden from the public or into a component unit of some sort, which are usually public authorities. That is another great way of hiding money or designating it so it can't be used for taxpayer purposes. Both call people customers, not the people. Very important. Are you a customer or are you a taxpayer? Well, half the time you don't even know. Most of the time, though, you're a customer. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
First of all, let me take just a moment to thank you for allowing me back into your homes. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation. Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees. There are no limits here. You start out by believing here. This is your world. You're the creator. Find freedom on this canvas.
All right, folks, welcome back.
That you can do it. You can do it. You can do it.
Truly in the corporation nation, welcome. Speaking, one of the other things that they do is they lay off employees with the excuse of budget shortfalls. Because when they do layoffs, when they cut public services, when they cut taxpayer services, you'll notice they never cut customer services. That's the funny part. When you see anything that's cut, it's always in the taxpayer realm. It's never in the non-governmental realm, because the non-governmental realm is where most of the profit comes from. But of course, instead of dipping into their vast trillions in liquid investment capital, they'll fire people. They'll cause taxpayers such pain and anguish. They'll cut such things as services to the blind. Instead of just selling a few stocks or demanding, as they are allowed to by law in the council, demanding that some of these liquid investments get returned so that these services can be paid. But no, like our example with the manager who buys 500 staplers to cover up his surplus, he harms people, or might lay off people just to get a bigger budget next year, just to raise taxes, hide the wealth. And of course, both control the media through their own stock investment, and use it to hide all of this information from the people by keeping them entertained with everything but truth, everything but reality. Now, the Associated Press went on to clarify a few things, and it's actually kind of funny when you read it. It says the Vatican City-State, which mainly manages the Vatican museums and is a separate and autonomous administration, managed a budget surplus of 21.8 million euro. But wait a minute. You're telling me that in one of its component units, one of its little sub-corporations, it's reporting 15 million, and that's what it's... But over here you have a 21.8 million surplus? Doesn't that mean you're actually ahead by $7 million in this? Oh, no, because they're separate and autonomous administrations, you see. Again, exactly how government works. Your port authorities might be raking in billions of dollars, while your governmental authority, your governmental corporation, your municipality might be showing it's in the red. It's exactly how it works. So, it says, the Vatican could also cheer that donations from the faithful were also up last year despite the global economic crisis. Donations from Peter's Pence, which are donations from the faithful to support the Pope's charity works, rose from 67 million to 69 million. That money, however, doesn't figure into the Vatican's operating budget, though contributions from dioceses, religious orders, and the Vatican Bank do. Again, here's an example, just like government, where the Vatican separates different funds and says, we'll put this in the budget report, and we'll keep this from the budget report. So the donations that it receives, which it doesn't use, it invests those donations. Don't forget that, okay? Donations aren't just used automatically, not by the United Way, not by government, not by the Red Cross. No. Go look at the United Way annual financial report. You'll see that it has massive investment fund. That's where all your money goes to if you're foolish enough to donate to such organizations as the United Way, the Red Cross being an actual government corporation. If you're foolish enough to think those things actually help people and are not just an investment scheme, well, by all means, go ahead, donate to them. But you might as well look and see in their annual financial report that they are just nothing but investment schemes. That's it. All it is. Just a way to collect donations, put them into the funds. I mean, you'll have cases where right next door to the Red Cross in Haiti, you'll have massive campsites of people who are not getting serviced by the damn Red Cross or by the United Way. They'll tell you. Go look at what happened with Katrina. And even in America, they don't help the people. It's all a show because they want people to invest by donating so that they can invest that into their investment funds. Same thing with pension funds. Same exact scheme. Taking taxpayer money and contributions from employees so that they can invest that money. Thus, CalPERS and New York Pension Fund and CalSTRS and the Texas Fund all have over $200 billion in investments sitting there while they claim that the pension fund is not able to fund the future payment. And the truth is that if you completely stopped taking money for pensions from taxpayers and from employees, you could fund the pensions for 15 years. They'd pay for themselves. You just have to liquidate the assets. Liquidate the liquid assets. That's the God honest truth. There is no pension deficit. It's all a lie. Why is it a lie? Again, what does government do? It creates a future liability. It says in our actuarial reports, which are complete bogus, just guesses that aren't based on anything logical, reasonable, or sound as far as financial and money, we see that the pension fund is not going to be able to pay. We have to pre-fund the pension fund so that we can invest that money, and unfortunately, it's not enough. But the truth is, CalPERS could go 20 years without ever collecting another dime from taxpayers or from the people who are invested in it, all the employees. They could pay benefits for 20 years without doing another thing. They could fire all their employees and have even more money. That's the God-honest truth. That's the way with all pension funds. That's how it is. It's the way it is with all cities. There are no broke cities. It's a lie. And that's provable by just reading. For God's sake, people should read the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I mean, like I said, biggest open secret. It's amazing. So here's donations from the faithful. That's funny. I'm not sure what their faith is in, but I'm not going to go there today. So, again, all those donations, 69 million, are not entered as something that's in the budget report. Why? They put those 67 or 69 million into an investment fund and, of course, invest in things and let it grow. Meanwhile, they might actually use, say, 20 million to actually help people, just like the United Way, just like Red Cross. Meanwhile, the investment fund grows and grows and grows and grows. Guess what, folks? If you search real hard, you can find the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the Vatican. You can find it for the City of London. You can find it for the House of Lords. You can find the outlays and appropriations for Congress. You can find anything you want if you just look. The problem is you never knew it existed. So why would you look in the first place? Again, what did Walter Beeren say so many times? The easiest way to steal money from people is if they never knew it existed in the first place. Brilliant. Very well said, Walter. Bravo. The Vatican Bank, according to Associated Press, known as the Institute for Religious Works. Wow, I forgot about that. The Vatican Bank, in case you didn't know, is known as the Institute for Religious Works. Oh, man, that's wonderful. That's hilarious. That takes the cake right there. The Vatican Bank, the central bank, is known as the Institute for Religious Works. For God's sake, what is our bank? What is the Federal Reserve known as? The institution to enslave humanity? I mean, what could ours be called? Because it certainly has nothing to do with God. Not that the Vatican's does either. Okay, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. So the Vatican Bank, also known as the Institute for Religious Works, is able to make such a big contribution to the Vatican's budget each year based on investments. So here you have the bank, which is also a big investment house. So its return on investments is what it is giving to the budget. This is just, it's no different. Every government in the world is set up the same way. If they've gone to democracy, if they've been forced to through war and occupation, spread of democracy, then they're in the same exact situation. That's enough on the Vatican. I mean, we've picked on it enough. The point is, it's a learning tool. You can see exactly the same lies and obfuscations through the Vatican as you can see with any city, county, or state. It's exactly the same thing. So it's a good learning tool is the point. Oh, so funny, though. We'll be back to talk more about the Institute for Religious Works. Stay tuned, folks. We're going to get into the history of this whole thing when we come back.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you. Tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Welcome to the Corporation Nation radio show program. In case I didn't mention it, and in case you didn't know, it's January 21st, 2014. And we are in day 2 of Cafr School. Now, sorry, got a frog in my throat. I wanted to, here's what happened. I started writing a book. I was like, I'm going to write a book on this Cafr stuff so that people can, really, and what I did is I picked apart the Stockton Municipal Corporation, Stockton City of Stockton is what its corporate name is. And I basically went through the entire Cafr, or I started to, and I got through a pretty big portion of it. It ended up being about 100 pages in my Microsoft Word document, which probably is 200 pages in a book. So I'm working on this, and I'm spending day and day and day just going through every possible thing I can to explain how the Cafr works, all the organizations and different associations it mentions, explaining all of those. And so if you'd like to read that, so what happened is all of a sudden the bankruptcy started happening, and it was happening a lot quicker than I thought. So I decided in my, to my misfortune, I said, well, maybe I can stop this bankruptcy from happening. If I can show them that they have billions, people that Stockton has billions of dollars, then, maybe someone will actually read this, all 100 pages, and actually do something about it. Well, of course, I'm wrong. And I don't kid myself that, changing the world is that easy anymore. But I do feel it's important for people to learn how they're being cheated, how the government has become organized crime. And so, basically I gave up. I might still, release an ebook or something. I don't know. But one of the parts I didn't put into that. Oh, by the way, if you want a full construct of how this all works, the breakdown of a city Cafr so that you can do the same to yours, then I highly recommend you go to my blog, which is realityblogger with 1G, realityblogger.wordpress.com, or just search The Stockton Bankruptcy Lie, and you'll find that. And if you really want to really fully understand what we're talking about and completely be schooled, that's the place to go. That's probably my most important thing I've done on this Cafr stuff, because it really does go page by page, line by line, note for note, and explains everything that's happening. So for those of you that are like myself, that really, really want to know, more than anything, just want to know, then that's the document for you, the Stockton Bankruptcy Lie. What I'm going to read now is the beginning of that I didn't put in that because this was the history, and since it was just about Stockton, I didn't go there. So I'm just going to read from my notes here. See if we have time to do this. Okay. The beginning of the 20th century is often referred to as the progressive era in American history. The many individual governments of the United States, including cities as municipal corporations, counties, which are also municipal corporations, districts, and state governments, all acted independently from one another without central uniform rules, codes, and laws to govern them. This created a quagmire, a quagmire of independent municipalities, made the implementation of streamlined code or law or regulatory, theme of organized crime very difficult for the creative financial opportunists inside of each government, generally requiring money laundering and other forms of dirty and illegal politics through the mafias and other organizations of ill repute. Crime and racketeering was commonplace inside and outside of government, though it is important to understand that what was considered a financial crime in 1900 is not necessarily considered a crime today. As there were none of today's corporate government protections in place, for instance, if a politician was caught red-handed committing fraud and extortion with public monies, the government and its modern attorneys and codes was not there to cushion the blowback upon the public official for his personal criminal activity while in a position of public trust. In other words, nowadays, these guys are fully protected by the limited liability status of being a government official, an elected official. It's very difficult to get them in trouble for their own actions, although they are, in law, responsible for their own actions. It's just difficult to prove that. In short, these men were actually still held accountable and responsible for their own actions back then, unlike today. That is, if they got caught. Now, catching them is a whole other thing, especially when all of their actions have been made legal. These inside criminal politicians and government realized that if they could make their collective criminal activity more streamlined and even legal by becoming more organized, creating a place inside of government to commit their theft and extortion of the people legally on behalf of those same people instead of outside the law and with organized, using the mob basically to launder money or casinos or whatever, then the business of organized crime could simply be called the government, and no mafia would be needed to launder their take. Government could simply use the banking system in which it regulates and government could invest its blood and tax money revenue into taxation, into the corporate structure of America. And indeed, it turns out, the entire world. And so the top financial officers in government began to organize, recognizing the possibilities for greed and opportunity while holding public funds. And if you think about it, where's all the money? It's in the public. Okay, where's all the money? It's in the public bank. They did this by creating what is called a professional association that they themselves could join as members, as politicians, in order to create and implement across the country a uniform set of rules and regulations for the organization and legality of the exaction, extortion, and utilization of the public's wealth for their own benefit, without the public ever catching on to their collective but legal theft. As early as 1900, some American state and local governments began adopting professionally developed accounting standards. The reform activists in New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Minneapolis were the first organized attempt to establish uniform government accounting standards in the United States. In 1900, the National Municipal League, which is a civic organization with cities as institutional members, again, the National Municipal League, set up a committee on uniform accounting methods. The committee stressed uniformity in accounting and the proper classification of revenues and expenses to facilitate statistical comparisons among cities. It also advocated independent audits of city governments by private sector auditors and recommended a prototype for reporting financial data. A Boston CPA named Harvey Chase took the ideas around the country and persuaded 11 states and 80 cities to adopt the committee's accounting model. And we'll stop right there and continue after the break.
We don't have enough to eat. Show the children with no shoes on their feet. How's the people living in the street? Oh, there's a solution.
He's a rebel and a runner. He's a signal turning green. He's a restless young romantic, wants to run the big machine. He's got a problem with his poisons, but you know we'll find a cure. He's cleaning up the systems to keep his nature pure.
All right, folks, looking back. Well, glad to see there's a lot of people in the chat room today, and actually yesterday. For those that wish to check out the chat room, it's corporationnation.chattango.com. Good times in there. So when we left off, let's see. So 1900, we organized the National Municipal League. There's actually a guy named Letts, and I don't think I need to say anything else about that. But 1900 National Municipal League, which created the Committee on Uniform Accounting Standards, and we're up to 11 states, 80 cities that adopted that model. Now, if that should sound familiar to you, because that's what the United Nations became, this organization that's trying to uniformly put every nation in the world under a international law scheme. So it's the same thing. This was sort of the origins of that. And, of course, the League of Nations preceded that and had a lot to do with. So in brief, 100 years ago, American business leaders and accounting professionals were already involved in government financial reforms. They urged American city governments to add fund accounting and budgetary accounting to business accounting practices, mixing government and business. These practical men of affairs were mainly concerned about installing systems and procedure for greater control to ensure financial integrity. The formulation of formal standards was deferred to the future. 1906, National Association of Comptrollers and Accounting Officers, another private non-governmental association, the NACAO, was established. Its successors would sponsor government accounting standards setting bodies for almost 8 decades. The NACAO was later named or renamed the Municipal Finance Officers Association, or MFOA. Keep that in mind. National Municipal League even went so far in its times, we're up to about the 1920s now, even went so far as to outline constitutional uniformity in each state constitution, with its promotion of what is called the Model State Constitution. Principle and a publication of that same name was issued by the National Municipal League in 1921. Remember, this National Municipal League is still around, and it's called the Civic League at this point. And this is the league that will deliver little notices to people that say, to new councilmen or women, that say conform and be a good party, a good part of the uniform part of the team, basically. Be a team player, and we'll pay you off, basically. The Model State Constitution is specifically described as, quote, an ideal of the structure and contents of a state constitution that emphasizes brevity and broad functions and responsibilities of government. Yeah, whatever. Today, the National Municipal League has been renamed to the National Civic League, NCL, a non-governmental, non-profit organization, or NGO, and retains the logo of a century of community building. Oh, community. There's that word again, Lark. I'll tell you, I gotta thank Lark for turning me on to this communitarian thing, because now anytime I see these words, it's kicking my butt, making me understand. It claims to advocate, that's the National Civil League. It claims now to advocate for transparency, effectiveness, and openness in all local governments, and promotes professional management of local governments by its creation of what's called model charters. So you'll notice that your charters have all been renewed and amended many times, so that, of course, the original charter is completely foreign to what the current charter of your municipal corporations, counties, and not states, but districts are for local governments. Other creations have been the model accrual budget, the model county charter, the model election system, with Diebold computers, and model municipal revenue bond law. Again, municipal bonds, of course, completely unnecessary for a county or city to borrow, but it would rather hoard the money, put it into a fund, and then say it has no money, so that it's required to borrow more money. And then, of course, in turn, it will loan money to, instead of paying off its own bonds, it will loan more money to other municipalities. Government loves debt. Debt enslaves people. Government loves slaves. And it seems like slaves love government, which is the sad part. So once again, we see this model legislation, which equates to a strict set of uniform codes, rules, and regulations as set out by its members, which, of course, are government, financial, and other appointed officers. So we elect people, they create an association, they join an association, they create model legislation, and they take it back and rubber stamp it, basically. With its promotion of uniform model charters for city and county governments, the NCL participates heavily in the green and sustainability game, as handed down by the United Nations Sustainable Development Plans under United Agenda 21, including forced racial inequality programs and attempting to create integration strategies for both legal and illegal immigrants into the local workforce as somehow normal. So, National Civic League also promotes and distributes publication to city and county officers, including such titles as Handbook for Council Members in Council Manager Cities, Digest of County Manager Charters and Laws, Forms of Municipal Government, and Modernizing State Constitutions, and on and on and on. One of the things that happened here in Utah, and I'm sure it's happened in many other states, we had a battle, although it was pretty tough because people wouldn't grasp or go read themselves what this thing was. But we had what is called the, the name just slipped me. It's where illegals can be hired, and they can actually sue your company if you don't hire them because they're not legal and they're trying to work on just a work permit. I'll have to think about the name here, but it's pretty funny when you think about it. And everybody supported it because they thought it was going to stop illegal immigration. Turns out Utah is what's called a immunity state. There's another name for it. So if you can get to Utah as an illegal alien, hey, great, you're protected once you get here. You can't get here legally, but once you get here, you're completely protected. You can work. You can do all kinds of things. We even have the ports where illegals can work and they're not even in the United States, within the United States. Inland ports, that kind of thing. Remember, this is not a government agency. This is a private association, okay, that we're talking about. Now, starting in 1906, these member organizations' first attempts was to bring all local and state governments under a conforming set of rules with a set of recommended business practices. During this time, the main goal was to set up as a system of better and similar financial record keeping in all local venues in an effort to make governments function more efficiently and to fight corruption at the local level. Though in truth, this association wished to fight the public exposure of the obvious and blatant illegal corruption by making it more streamlined and legal. So while they're saying this is to organize, to fight corruption, what it really is organizing the criminal activity. This is creating organized crime within government and streamlining it, making all governments cooperate in the same crime. But of course, again, if law is lawless and crime is considered legal, then there is no crime, right? What a wonderful world. Stay with us, folks. We'll be back.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. All our sensory systems, and then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. Explodes into this enormous collage. And in this moment, we are perfect.
I know this is a little dry. I understand that. I just think it's necessary to put this out there so that we can really see the history of how this whole private association thing is. But this is also the history of how the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report came along. And basically what I'm telling you, just to summarize this, is that the mafia always had two sets of books. Organized crime, the reason it's so successful is because it always had two sets of books. They could go after the mafia and the mafia bosses, but it was almost impossible to get them in court because they would kill witnesses, they would, discredit witnesses, they would do all these things. So what generally happened? They'd get them on tax evasion. They'd get them on charges that had nothing to do with their actual crimes. Well, we're in the same situation today. Government literally has two sets of books in its presentation, even though they're the same book, and one book is just the end result of the total book, and it's a lie and it's an obfuscation. The whole idea of all of this was to get government to be organized crime and to have two sets of books, one for public consumption that is a complete and utter obfuscation of fact, and the other to be a control mechanism or a reporting mechanism so government actually knows what the heck's going on in all of its 230,000 different governments. I want you to understand that. There's a reason this history is so important, because literally it was the creation of government as organized crime. What was government before this? As we just read, it was unorganized in its criminal activity. Each county, each city was doing different things, laundering the books in different ways. So what was this doing? This was creating organized crime, organized laundering, organized investments, organized self-insurance. We see that's why this is so important. So over the next 25 years, all these improvements in record keeping became more commonplace as local governments began to embrace this 100% private association's recommendations. And because the federal government also recommended these new standards and practices for the benefit of the people. So now you've got the federal government saying, yep, that's who you should listen to right there, that non-governmental association of attorneys, lawyers, and accountants. I wrote something down today as I was just thinking. Maybe this will ring true in your heart, maybe it won't. It's a very simple sentence. I wrote earlier, I said, in a world without attorneys and accountants, the world's problems would correct themselves very simply, an eye for an eye. But instead, we have the accounting system, financial accounting system created by attorneys. We have a whole legal system. And we're sitting here, again, like bumps on a log, completely like deer in headlights with this big legal code thrown in our face. We wear guns, but we don't use them. We lock them up in safes instead. We have swords, but we can't bear them. Well, we're completely disarmed by words, by magic, by word magic. It's incredible when you think about it. And boy, I have to agree with these people who are just so dead against attorneys. Boy, would things change. Boy, would things change. No protection, no limited liability, nothing. Be a beautiful sight, really. All right, so December 31st, 1931. Well, actually, let me go back up here. With the advent of the Tommy gun in the 1930s as a tool of choice to enforce the mafia's will, and with the Federal Reserve now well established, and with its ever-incremental increase in debt-based currency, the non-governmental association's pen was becoming increasingly stronger as well in day-to-day government operations and financial accounting. And it's important to say that, of course, the fiat currency, The only reason this country grew is because of fiat currency. Whatever your opinion of fiat country is, if we were to stick to the gold standard, basically there would be no growth. We would not be able to have become the powerful nation we were. We would be stuck with a limited amount of money. With a fiat currency, this nation was able to build itself to the monstrous military industrial complex it is today. It would not have been able to do that by just saying, oh, we have this much gold, and compared to Russia, we're pretty much equal, and here's the gold over here. No. Okay, the only thing a gold-backed currency does is actually limit the possibilities. And they realized this. Okay, it's not good or bad. It's just that this nation could not have been paid for without a fiat currency that is debt-based. Simple as that. Now that it's here, and now that we're seeing the ramifications, of course, we see that it was pure evil. But the point is, without any emotion attached to it, this nation would not have been built. The Industrial Revolution probably wouldn't have happened without this type of fiat currency support. Which is why other countries, of course, have ditched the gold standard, have gone to fiat currency. I mean, it's what else would you do in organized crime, right? I mean, what else would you do? It wouldn't make sense to stick to a gold standard because then you'd be limited. Gold's not respected in that way when it comes to money, so it's just important to understand that. So on December 31st, 1931, it was time for these financial accountants in government to make the next move and to begin to take this incremental takeover of government accounting to an expanded international stage. On this date, the name of the National Association of Comptrollers and Accounting Officers was changed and reorganized into another 100% private association called the International Association of Municipal Finance officers, IAMFO. So you see, globalization's been going on for much longer than we thought. And this was the beginning of a true push for a more global structure of government organization, or legal extortion, on a global scale, making international the organized crime of governments across the world, but also uniform. That's the most important part. And by the way, folks, we are on, if you didn't hear me say it before, we are actually, America is actually going to be going to an international standard. The same standard that the UK is on, the same standard that Canada is on, we are going to be going to that. They've already been talking about it. So, uniformity across the world, uniform organized crime, with equal protections set into law, allowing for this exaction and extortion on a grand scale. Uniform protections of crime. But they also knew that this goal would be a slow process, taking many decades to implement in a slow and methodical takeover of government accounting and standards of practice, slowly draining the productivity and wealth of the global populations through what would eventually become the largest investment scheme in the history of mankind, exactly where we are today. In other words, this was all created, the money, taxpayer money, was collected or created through appropriations, so it's a future debt, not even paid for by taxpayer money. That money goes immediately, whenever it's created, into a fund, or it's transferred into another government, and they put it into an investment fund. That's what we're talking about. This is how government bought the world. The National Committee on Municipal Accounting, NCMA, was formed in 1934 by the Government Financial Officers Association to create accounting standards. As a result of its work, the principles of municipal accounting and the predecessor to the Cafr, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, was created. The successor to the NCMA, which was the National Council on Government Accounting, issued Government Accounting, Auditing, and Financial Reporting, a publication which is the basis of the format for the current standards. This document, known as the Blue Book, quote unquote, and its successors documented the Cafr accounting structure and provided standardization and example documents. By 1946, various levels of government, federal, state, local, and municipal, each began producing a Cafr. So 1946 was really the year that this all started, with this form of reporting, this form of uniform reporting, and all levels of government, because, of course, the federal government started requiring it. It's a catalog and accurate picture of institutional funds, enterprise, operations, or financial holdings, assets, and total investment incomes for those government and non-governmental entities using this report. This measure is above and beyond the budget process and replaced what was regularly an off-the-books practice. So all the stuff that used to be off the books, all the organized crime that was off the books, is now on the books. For God's sake, it's called the Cafr. We now have a book that describes the off-the-book organized crime. And we don't know about it. We don't use it. We don't utilize it. That's the amazing part about it. This is the history. We'll be back, folks.
Is this real? Versus this rhyme? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a rhyme. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a rhyme. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Life goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. Up and down, round and round, and it's very loud. Don't worry, don't be afraid. It's just a rhyme. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Why are we here?
I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. A higher order. Call it what you want. Know what I call it? The big electron. The big electron. The big electron. It doesn't punish, doesn't reward. It doesn't judge at all. just is, and so are we, for a little while.
Welcome back. So we've come up to the more modern times, and we've said by 1946 the federal government basically started promoting and requiring local governments and state governments to have an audited Cafr. By the way, the Federal Reserve has been producing their annual reports, and since 1946, I believe, the Cafr, since its inception. And those are the audited financial statements of government as required by the Federal Reserve Act. Sorry to burst your bubble, all you Fed people, but the whole thing's a scam. It's designed to make you blame the Fed, which is just a part of government, instead of blaming government itself. It's meant to keep your eyes off of Congress, who completely controls the Fed, and of course to make them appear non-complicit. They even pass laws that say the Fed doesn't have to expose things while in the public congressional hearings. So, of course, the public doesn't get to know what's really going on unless they read the Federal Reserve Cafr. Then you can see anything you want. You can see where all the interest on Federal Reserve notes go, which is, of course, back into the Treasury. Yes, that's right. All that interest charge on the Federal Reserve notes goes back to the Treasury. Right there in the financial report, all you need to know. Talks about all the 238 million troy ounces of gold that the government is holding to collateralize the U.S. dollar. Talks about so many things that would fascinate you if only you would read. So, now, basically what happened is the budget process was replaced. So the off-the-books practice, again, became what's called the General Fixed Asset Account Group. So, in other words, the Cafr is literally, technically, it's off the books. It's what government does. It used to be called laundering, and now instead of laundering it through some casino or something, it just invests it. It's the same thing. It gets it off the books. What does it get? What book does it get it off? It gets off the budget report. People don't see it. People don't know about the Cafr because it's never talked about in school, in the media, or anywhere else. So why would they look? It's the off the books, except now it's law that it's on the books. And again, this was because, imagine trying to organize all 230,000 government's investments from a central location uniformly. You can't do it without a report of some kind. Thankfully for us, probably for a limited time only, the Cafr is available to the public. It is searchable. You can find it in your own venue. Just type in your city or your state or whatever you're looking for and Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. If you're in Canada, then it's CANFR, CANFR. If you're in the United Kingdom, I wrote something on that. I'm sure I can. Probably not up right now, but I can probably find it. What it's actually called. The point is, every country in the world that's a mainstream first world country is on the same system. They might have different names for different tricks and different categories for different things, but they're all the same thing. We're all under the same uniform system. General purpose government budget reports did not reflect accounting of this financial data, the off-the-books stuff that we're talking about, in other words, the investment scheme. Only reporting on the budget, what is mistakenly referred to as rainy day funds or pension fund investments. Okay, I want to tell you right now, folks, there is no such thing as a rainy day fund. If you hear a politician call anything a rainy day fund, you look him in the eyes and you tell him he's full of crap. There is no such thing as a rainy day fund. Okay? There is no fund that has ever existed in the world called a rainy day fund. That's the point. You have sewer funds, water funds, golf funds. You have debt servicing funds, funds where they put money to account for future debt payments. Even if the debt payment's not going to happen for 30 years, government's going to put money into that fund. It's not for a rainy day because it is specifically for that purpose. If a rainy day came, government would not be able to take that money and pay for the rain. You understand? The money is there designated for a certain purpose, which is the excuse for why they can't use it for rainy days. Every day is a rainy day, for God's sake. I mean, think about that. There is no rainy day fund. It's a lie. It's an illusion. Each investment fund is designated for a certain purpose. It cannot be used for anything else. That is not to say that they can't change the law, that we can't change the law, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow is Walter Burien and his tax retirement fund solution, which I think will really hit this home. It doesn't mean that the laws can't be changed. Laws are meant to be changed. Let's face it. By the 1970s, the Cafr became the nationwide paradigm for local government accounting. The resulting Cafr is presented to the Government Financial Office Association and other non-profit, non-governmental. They even give awards for it's called the Certificate of Achievement Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting. If you're a good little reporter. Oh, let's see, what time do we got? I got 1 minute. I'm gonna go fast forward here just because this is the most important part. This is what the GASB, a Government Accounting Standards Board, this is what the website says on its About page. You can go there yourself, read it for yourself. What is the GASB? The Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, is the independent organization. That's right, independent organization that establishes and improves standards of accounting and financial reporting for U.S. state and local governments. Established in 1984 by agreement of the Financial Accounting Foundation, FAF, which is another non-governmental private association, and 10 national associations of the state and local government officials, the GASB is recognized by governments, the accounting industry, and the capital markets as the official source of generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, which is for state and local governments. Okay, that's what all governments follow, GAAP. This is like saying Walmart is granted the standard for all retail sales in America. I mean, it's ridiculous. The GASB, again, from their own site, the GASB is not a government entity. Instead, it is an operating component of the FAF, which is a private sector, not-for-profit entity. The FAF funding for the GSB comes primarily from an accounting support fee established under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, as well as the sale of certain publications. Its standards are not federal law or regulation, and the organization does not have enforcement authority. Compliance with GASB's standards, however, is enforced through the laws of some individual states and through the audit process when auditors render opinions on the fairness of financial statement presentations in conformity with the generally accepted accounting principles. What is this the same as? How about Common Core? Sure, you can deny Common Core, but if your kid can't pass the test that is Common Core, he's going to fail class. So yeah, you can take your kids out of school, but they're not going to get anywhere if they can't pass the Common Core test. Well, if your auditing form, you don't want to cooperate, doesn't comply with GASB standards and GAAP, guess what? You're not going to get a little shiny award, and you're probably going to have some problems with the federal government. Well, there's a little bit more here, but I think that last little part should really hit it home for you. The GASB is not a government entity, a private sector, non-for-profit entity. That's who rules you. Come back tomorrow for day 3 of Cafr School, and we'll see you then.